Alright, we're back in the Omniscience game, and we're not in turn 16, we're in turn 14. And this is also the reason that I held up this video. I needed to record this addendum before we went into turn 16, because it's really important. Unfortunately, I lost my voice, and it was taking a while for me to get to it. What I missed when we went through turn 14 quickly was this battle in Laria. In Laria, Fomoria's God came out. Ice Mist Scimitar, Fear Helmet, Titan Chassis. 120 hit points, 17 prot, decent attack and defense. Bless means it has regeneration on its 120 hit points, and it's got those 2 Ice Mist Scimitar attacks. It's up against a collection of Oni and a single Oni Sugar, who happens to be the Prophet, who has Iron Will. What happened was, the buff cycle went on, and I think was interrupted relatively early by that wolf, but still most of the buff cycle went off. So we've got reinvigoration and we've got extra protection. The problem is, well, for one thing, Oni units hit really bloody hard, as in 30 damage hard. So instantly, they're in and they're doing significant damage. Oni in Chaos Power have high attack skills, and this Nordachi weapon's really, really good. Ilwinter loves the Japanese swords. So the Nordachi has a 2 attack bonus, a 2 defense bonus, and does heaps of damage. So 30 damage on those swings. And you can see already, the Lord of the Forest is down to 68 health. It's hard to SC, well, early game SC against Oni. And the Ice Mist Scimitar is not going to kill them reliably, when you take account of the fact that, well, now it's already routing, it loses, and it's gone. It's gone. Let's just see what got the final hit. Only hit Lord of the Forest in the body, Nordachi, for 32 points of damage. You can see all these Nordachi hits do non-negligible amounts of damage. It's always damage roll 30 plus whatever versus 21 plus 7, and then the slash increases the damage that gets through. So 26 damage got through here, that became 32. So the Lord of the Forest died on turn 14, and that's really significant because it means Fomoria's regen bless in all of the turns that we're looking at subsequently on the Fomorian Kings, which I think was meant to be the crux of his counterattack. Regenning Fomorian Kings that could sort of counter Thug or go mano-a-mano with the Dione. Although, as we've seen, probably not with the actual Oni themselves. That strategy is significantly undermined because his bless is offline and Yomi's isn't, which means Yomi is still getting the full benefit of their regen bless. Fomoria isn't. And with that note, we're going to jump into turn 16 because this makes what happens next make a lot more sense. Alright, g'day everyone, it's turn 16. Let's go through what happened. So TNN, that's one of TNN's main armies moving through. We'll go look at the map of this in a moment, just checking for any interesting battles to begin with. Oh, Sauromatia and Caelum had a throwdown in Latian. Okay, so this is not what all of what Sauromatia has. This is a significant amount of what Caelum has. And the hero, once again, I think, is going to be the Storm Knight with his legendary Daphnis. Okay, but anyway, attack skill 17, defense skill 21, high prot, and some reasonably damaging attacks. And fear, I believe. So let's see what happens. The Auropata are going to mulch those birds, by the way. Is what's going to happen... Okay, so the infantry do drop on the Auropata. They are going to get absolutely destroyed. However, the rear line of the Sauromatian army is similarly going to get absolutely destroyed. Is this his only commander? I wonder. I think this is the only commander. I mean, I would have put, like, some rear guards in against a Caelian army, because I think this warrior sorceress is just going to get... Who happens to be a hero, by the way. Like lightning reflexes. This unit has potential. It's got huge defense skill. This is probably going to die. Oh, is that a second warrior sorceress? The second warrior sorceress has come back. Okay, so both of the warrior sorceresses are now in serious, imminent danger, and the Auropata are riding back slowly to save them. One warrior sorceress is dead. Is the other one going to die? She hasn't really been harassed down yet. It's going to come down to where does the Storm Knight go? He's fighting Auropata. She's still got really high defense. She's blood surge. She's tough. She might be able to tank all of this. The Storm Knight is down to just the Eagle King. Oh, so this is the second shape of the Storm Knight, by the way. I haven't actually seen this unit before in game, so it's kind of cool. All right, so there you are. That's the second shape. He's really pissed off because he's berserking. In fact, he is a berserker because of the loss of his only true friend, and because he is berserking, he wins the day. Okay, and then he dies after battle. Interesting. Okay, so Sauromatia loses 8 Oroparta, 2 warrior sorceresses, some cheat, whatever, and some archers. 8 Oroparta matter, but proportionally speaking, this blob of infantry for Caelum, including 20 sacreds. Remember that the Raptors are sacred in EA, and the Storm Knight means this is probably a pretty crushing blow for Caelum. Caelum's got basically their new recruits in their capital, and that's about it. Caelum now has 3 provinces, although Caelum has 50 bloody PD in Cradle of Life. You'd think that they would have fought on 162, maybe. Well, there's a bigger Sauromatian army here. They might have been gambling on trying to pick up a couple of Sauromatian units there. Anyway, moving on. Yomi attacked Fomorian and won. Watching a lot of battles, but I'm going to check this one out quickly just to see what the gearing of the Fomorian king was. And remember, this battle makes more sense when you know that this Fomorian king will not have regeneration, just his reinvigoration. Ice Smith Scimitar, Horror Helm, Ranger's Boots. 13, 17, 70. 17, 16, 50, but a lot more paths to do a buff cycle with, and regen and ore. And doing 37 damage once as opposed to 33 damage twice. But yeah, he's got everything. He's got protective force. The skeletal body won't help. But you can see here, okay, so they're stabbing at each other. One's going to have regen, the other one isn't. Or just stop blocked him there. That hurt. That hurt really quite badly, down to 17. And that's a rout. And I think that was a death. I think it must have bled out. It must have been bleeding when it routed because it's showing as dead. So what probably happens is that it was bleeding, and then when it routed, it died. So that round definitely goes to Yomi. And Fomoria loses a geared Fomorian king, which is a resource they cannot have in great numbers. Atlantis is beating up Jabolba. A single basalt king came in and cleared out the PD in the army. Yomi attacked a TNN province and didn't face any resistance. So the Beratos war is now like fully on. So Ulm and I believe Helheim are all in it along with Maconi at this point. Yep, so Maconi attacked Beratos and won. That is one. That's not one in inverted commas, because 3 Giganti Ectromoi balanced against the loss of 11 of these capital Colossi Sacreds. So win to Maconi on that one. Pangea still clearing independence. You saw Helheim there. Another Maconian attack. We'll see this on the map in a moment. And this battle is important. So I was talking recently about the danger of the tour raiding and the unfortunate position that Yomi found itself in. And what Yomi really needed to do is actually catch a TNN raiding force and destroy it. Here it managed to guess where a TNN force was going and fight it on a whole bunch of PD. So, what's happening here is the tour warriors are coming in. They're going to butcher the PD first, but they are going to be quite significantly outnumbered. This is keeping them busy. Meanwhile, Yomi's throwing flames at them. Not really many casualties, but the Dione, 2 of them, are in a position to roll up, deploy their fear auras, and also deploy their very high damage, high attack value attacks in order to pick them off as well. And what you can see happen there is, thanks to the sacrifice of all of the PD and the Rap, and also the harassment provided by these ghost form and ordinary form Oni, is the tour that don't run die. 21 tour warriors for the loss of 8 Ko-Oni and 2 Aka-Oni. Also, they lost 5 Shi warriors, who are, not negligible units. This is a pittance for Oni. Remember, these are free spawn units. But the Dione here did the work of the auraing, but every unit in the Yomi army put in an effort. up to and including PD got kills. The bandits, yeah, so the archers, the bandits, all these PD units, 100 PD units in total, made a difference, while the Dione provided the support of their fear auras to help swing the entire thing. So that's a significant battle. Where were we up to? That must have been close to the last battle. Yep. This is all Helheim attacking Beratos. Yomi beating up on Femoria, and we're up to that. Okay, so in terms of strategic positioning, we'll just go over where these attacks are happening before we go on to the next turn. So Helheim is driving in the center. This is all former Beridian clay. No, it's Helheim's now. And Helheim is in a position to capitalize because they move quick as the wind. And there's very little Beratos can do to stop them unless they want to deploy their actual reserve capital army, including Conjuration Mages. Ulm is just poking around the edges and looks like they'll pinch off this territory here and maybe go in a little bit further. Bahamut seems doomed to fall under the Ulmish boot. But, you know, Ulm's playing an okay game here. They're getting rid of Beratos, who could be a threat, and injecting themselves in a coalition. Probably also knowing that it's unlikely the coalition's going to turn on them next. It's likely that either Makoni or Helheim would want the help of them against someone else. That's maybe them thinking ahead, but for the moment, this is a nice low-risk war for Ulm as long as they don't push their way into a main Beretian stack. Makoni, meanwhile, is pushing along the coasts, the south coast and the north coast. The real strategic goal here has got to be Uzur-Diazaran. It's not a particularly valuable province, but it is a wasteland. It's Beratos' only wasteland other than their capital, and so a location where they can do a lot of their most dangerous summoning. So they'll want to take that if they can. I'm not sure about the strength of these Makonian armies. They look more like raiding forces, and reinforcements are only starting to come up now. I'm not sure they're strong enough to handle any major Beridian force at the moment. Same with this force here. I'm not sure this force, I mean, it did just kill 14 Colossi warriors, which bodes well, but there are still 40 units here, mostly spearmen and mage pilot. Reinforcements could come from the capital. I think Beratos has enough to fight on maybe 2 of the 4 fronts that they're dealing with. They could fight either of the 2 Makoni fronts, they could fight the Ulm, or they could fight Helheim. We'll see which one they choose. This is the structure of the Jabolban War at the moment. Jabolba with the successful defense against the Basalt King, even though they lost stuff and the king didn't die. I think this is just the king getting chaffed up until it retreats. Meanwhile, Atlantis hasn't really massed troops, whereas Jabolba is massing heaps of troops, but in the end, Atlantis has a crushing material advantage at this point. There's 30 living pillars here, there's 20 living pillars here, there's a couple of Basalt Kings all over the place. If they bring them together, that'd be a bit of a hammer blow. And then finally, there's the Yomi Conflict. The Yomi Conflict has basically Yomi focusing on Femoria. So Laria has been taken. This is now Yomi territory, complete with its Windspire. They'll like that because it means they can stick a temple in it, and that temple is safe. It also means these forces are now freed up to come and put siege strength on Femoria itself. Femoria is being kept under siege. They can't recruit there. And this Dione killed probably their last real active force, which was led by that Fomorian king. Some of it may have retreated here, but I don't think it has a commander anymore. It doesn't. So if he goes here, he'll just wipe out what's left, and that'll be the end of the Fomorian army, other than whatever's hidden in the capital. Meanwhile, he took a somewhat defensive blocking stance against TNN. He moved here and hit 21 Tour warriors, which goes away towards weakening the TNN stacks. However, I would still say TNN probably has a lot of units in the field. If TNN has only made 20-something tours by this point, tour warriors by this point in the game, something's gone horribly wrong. This Oni is a little bit exposed, but he is putting pressure up on TNN closer to home. And putting pressure on the enemy is important. He might even be tempted to try and take this forest in order to deny some of these resources to the capital, which is where all of TNN's production is taking place. Despite having a moderately sized grip of territory, TNN's only got 1 fort, which makes them vulnerable. And with Agartha basically grouped up here, that force looks like it'll be starving, but this is EA Agartha. They don't eat shit, so they're perfectly fine. Supply usage is probably 0 or close to. They, I believe, are in a position to come in and vulture TNN, which would be a expert vulture move, because TNN's forces are all fully deployed. So if the EU4 all memes want to act like an EU4 player and get on this war, no CB it and take whatever they can, then they're in a position to do so. That's turn 16. We're going to progress to turn 17, see how it evolves. Turn 18, we'll do a check-in as always. So, see you shortly. All right, T17 Battle Roundup. This was what I said last turn. Yomi cleaning up the last of the Fomorian forces. Helheim just making good time against the forces of Beratos, all with their little conservative little attacks. Hinnom clearing some independence. There are still independents to clear. This looks like a throne that they've just cleared. We'll check that in a moment. Helheim again. Again, this is the, I believe, the northern Dione, but we'll check that. Atlantis smacking through some PD and actually winning this time, so the Basalt King did not rout off. Instead, it managed to fear Aura off the PD, and then got bounced off a bunch of Relayan chaff that came in, clearly wanting to poach the same province. They ran too from the Basalt King's scary, scary fear Aura. This early game had this match has really showed off fear auras in action, for better and worse. Sauromatia pushing on Caelum. This is the province they fought in last turn. It is now solely Sauromatian. They brought a lot more Aurapatha this time, along with extra leaders. Orm bringing the pig out to fight Beratos. That's one way to take provinces. More Helheim. And another one of these conflicts. Only this time the Dione did it solo. So this is a solo Dione against a good-sized block of Tuatha warriors. Some of the Tuatha De Danaan's finest. The mages are not gemmed or anything, and this is a this is a tough skill. Okay, so this is a hero Dione. So he is at what? 23 protection. He is at fire shield. Is he pierce resistant yet? He's got to get himself pierce resistant before the Tuatha make contact. Yep, he's preparing a skeletal body. He is skeletal. Okay, so he's now pierce resistant. That's important, because it's going to halve the damage of the incoming spears. Which means those javelins pose basically zero threat, and the actual golden spears themselves probably also don't pose a huge amount of threat until they come in large numbers, and large numbers they will come in. So everything is going to come into play here. The increased protection, the ore, mitigating some of the attacks. These are relatively high morale units, but at the same time they will fail some ore checks. We won't be seeing any repel because there's no weapon gearing here. And every time there's a hit, there's just that crunch as someone dies. The slingers, I don't feel, are doing any favors here. They're probably popping the glamour of their own guys a little too much. Also, the fire shield doing good work setting some people on fire here. So we're going to speed it up. I'm not seeing any sign that there's enough damage. There was never a full surround. There was never enough damage to chunk it down. It did go down to 33 hit points. But those Sacreds just didn't make the kind of contact, and they didn't make the contact at the right time, and they didn't pass the checks they needed to check in order to make it worthwhile. And also, I think these slingers were critical. I think these slingers made a critical contribution to Yomi's military efforts. I think it looked like they popped some serious glamour, and they were never with 8 blunt damage going to hurt the Dione. Maybe with head hits. With head hits they would do some damage, but not enough to merit them popping the glamour of the Tuatha that were actually doing the fighting. So another 18 Tuatha De Danaan dead, along with a cluster of Fearbolg. That's another blunting of TNN's offensive potential at the same time that Fomori is collapsing. Relay attacked Yomi. I believe this is agreed. We're going to look at it only because he who breathes is hilarious. So, people say that early age relay cannot come on land. Well, if you're playing this game, Turkul exists. And Turkul is a air, water, aboleth. Basically, he went on land, he was kept captive, and he discovered precision telekinesis. This guy has hand slots. Good number of hand slots. He has the ability to hold, like, I think 4 single-handed weapons or shields. You can see him using, at the moment, he uses a glaive and a trident at the same time, and a shield. Not bad. He doesn't have any of his actual tentacles, though. Turkul may be important because this seems cool. Turkul is actually important. One, because he's an amphibian, so he can go on land himself, but also because these are the Amulet of the Fish Paths. Turkul can create the amulets that allow his brother Aboleths to go on land and be relevant. Turkul now returns to advise the Aboleths in the conquest of the air breathers because he himself is an air breather, and he can make items to turn other Aboleths into air breathers too. I will find out about that battle for you. Helheim bad mannering on Beratos by clearing independence at the same time. Makoni attacking Beratos. And Agartha has attacked TNN. So Agartha is going to Vulture. They're going in with 42 Great Olms. 42 at 50 gold a pop. Watch this. That's a bit more than half of the PD that's paralyzed or dead, and that's including multiple hits. See, people are actually dying. There's so many Mind Blasts, people are dying. Will any of them... No, none of them will meet the Pale Ones. So you can talk about how Pale Ones are a bit derpy, and they don't have attack skill or defense skill, but when you've got 42 freaking Olms, you get to fire off 420 Mind Blasts before they run out of bloody ammo. And even the Pale Ones can handle dudes who are literally paralyzed and have 0 skill. And the Snek is here. He's not a particularly strong Snek, but he's a Fear 250 HP Snek, and that's all he needs to be. So, Agartha Vulturing, and then we're into gems. Okay, so let's look at our wars. Atlantis has closed the noose, and Xibalba is getting ready for its final stand. They've got a whole bunch of Scorpions and Shades, Xibalban Guards, Beast Bats. Everything and the kitchen sink that can defend Xibalba is there to defend Xibalba. Meanwhile, Atlantis seems to be being cautious. They're leading with their geared kings, but the troops are being held back. What they need is to bring the troops forward in large numbers in order to bulk out their, build up around these Basalt Kings, so that the troops and the Basalt Kings' fear auras can work in concert to break the Xibalban forces. Beratos is in a tough position. Now, they haven't suffered major military losses so far, just territory losses. Helheim has ripped apart Central Beratos. Absolutely ripped it apart, with very little actual resistance. Ulm is working over this fortress in Bahamut and has taken, a few provinces in the center. The big pressure is coming from Makoni. Makoni suffered a bit of a reverse this turn, actually, when they lost an E4 and an army and some PD, a significant amount of PD, to a major barbarian attack, which has actually cut this force here on Uzur-Yazran off, which is a problem for them, because that's the more efficient reinforcement path. Now they have to go round the long way. Looks like they've recruited some mercenary undead there. Yeah, Nagash. Not Nagash, because we're not getting in on anyone else's IP. It's Nergash. Very important distinction. Meanwhile, Beratos has just pulled back to the capital and is in a position to now basically say, who are they going to throw their death ball at? I don't think they're going to sit in their capital and just wait to take it. I think this death ball is going to roll out and fight someone. At least that's what I would do. The only way to get out of this as Beratos is to take this concentration of force, pick an enemy, crush them, and then convince them that life isn't worth, the war isn't worth it, and to go away. And if you can repeat that process, eventually you get out of a war. And then you're in a 1v1, and then you have to win that 1v1, and then you're back in the game. That's the idea anyway. Or you can even flip the coalition around, and you can become part of a coalition against someone else. Anyway, that's that war. Beratos in a tough position territorially. Helheim now blisteringly, blazingly powerful for having very few losses. The quiet pacifist giants of Hinnom have cleared their throne, as we saw, very cheaply. It is the silver throne, so Hinnom now has Air Astral and Crosspath, handy, plus the extra gold from that throne. Not a bad thing. There probably could be some good sites there too. It's showing Death 3. and there are no events that we are aware of. So there is a death site there too in Silver Grove. It'll always produce gold because of the throne, once the throne is claimed anyway, but you can also find some nifty death gems if you can get some death searching done on it. Fantastic. As for the Yomi Tnn conflict, this is now looking very different than it did 2 turns back. The intervention of Agartha basically dooms TNN because they've got nothing in their backline that can deal with this. TNN will fall. Agartha is, for basically, I'm calling it now, cheaply going to move in, break TNN, and with 42 ohms, you can take a fort. They'll just pick them. They'll pick the mages and defenders. They'll just pick them off. There's that many Mind Blasts there. And it looks like there's even more over here if they need to bring reinforcements over. So, yeah, Agartha's going to get TNN. Yomi is in a position now where they basically just have to assault for more at some point. It's going to be it's a siege strength problem, essentially. They've fended off most of TNN's attempts to attack them at this point by killing those 2 offensive armies, or at least blunting them and pushing them back. Losing about half the tour that they have is a very significant loss for TNN, especially now that they know they also have to defend their capital against Agartha. So this has gone from a position where Yomi is outmatched to, I think, TNN has been outmaneuvered diplomatically and to an extent militarily, and is probably going to lose. Finally, Sauromatia-Caelum. This war does deserve its own mention, if only because Sauromatia looks like they're pulling it off pretty well. Caelum is coming back into their capital. They're poking out. They're doing all they can do. The only thing that remains to be seen is, will Caelum wait to pick a fight on their capital, or will they take the fight on Cradle of Life? You'd like to imagine that with 50 PD, they're going to take a fight there. That said, they're probably going to lose. 31 Oripata. A few more over here. Yeah, look, 31 Oripata probably just chew everything Caelum has. I'm not sure what PD type. This is a big question. What PD type is Cradle of Life? Because 50 PD is a lot. We'll find out what sort of PD it is. But even then, 31 Oripata? That's it for this turn, I think. We will jump to turn 18, and then we will do a roundup. I'm aware I'm not really doing specific nation summaries, but that's because these wars are sufficiently active. So we'll save it for a game state analysis at turn 18. See you shortly. Turn 18. Hinnom has claimed the Silver Throne. Pangaea is continuing to pretend that independents are the only enemies in the game, and there was a fight in Cradle of Life, and dear God, that looks ugly. So it turns out that it was light cavalry as the PD type, not heavy cav. Well, there's some heavy cav here, but I don't think it's the good heavy cav. No, it's the 14 prot heavy cav, but they're more common in the EA. Anyway, and the birds jump straight away. Why? Oh no! Oh, they might have been PD birds. Yeah, that might be it. They might be PD birds. Anyway, so the Sauromatia does what they have to do against birds. You create a big defensive box, and you wait for them to come to you. And that's exactly what's going to happen. The cavalry are coming in drips and drabs. I'm not sure why those Oripata advanced, but it did block up all of those light cavalry. Now, compare a heavy cavalryman, 10, 14, 14, 10, with 2 13 damage attacks, to an Oripata. Attack 12, defense 20. Whole bunch of advantages, particularly when they kill something. A 16 damage and a 15 damage attack. So immediately, much superior defense, much less likely to get hit, and able to take those hits better, do a lot more damage when they hit, so they're a lot more likely to do more than chip, and when they do kill something, they become even more killy in turn. You can see the Blood Surge ones. Here's a Blood Surge one, doing 19 damage with the Light Lance now. So now it's just going to be a cavalry grind fest, and eventually the Sauromatian cavalry, through the power of much superior statistics, grind their way through. And that is probably all she wrote for Caelum. Sauromatia killed 131 odd units. They lost 5. 5 Oripata and 1 Lancer. Against a defense force of about 20 heavy cav, 50 light cav. not all cavalry are created equal, and this early age heavy cavalryman is not the sometimes monstrously powerful versions of heavy cavalry you see elsewhere. This is a bit of a trap heavy cavalryman, and against an Oropada, they were just horribly outmatched. And Beratos fought a big battle with Makoni, and looks like they did pretty well. I say big battle, but I think overwhelmingly, this army is the mercenary undead. It's actually a very small Makonian army, not even any gems on the E4. So just a couple of hoplites, a bunch of undead. So what that tells me is this was just siege chaff. GC rolled this in, thinking he was just going to use the siege power to break the fort, and Beratos wasn't going to come out to play. Beratos did come out to play with lesser air elementals and 2 mages capable of casting them in reasonable numbers. And it looks like those lesser air elementals had a field day, coupled with some big banishments, it looks like. Yeah, Holy 2 banishments. Holy 2 banishments and a couple of air elementals. The Beridian infantry do rout off, but so does the Makonian giant, and that's going to disintegrate the remaining undead, giving Beratos the win. So in terms of losses, it looks like big in terms of numbers. It's actually a pretty battle. Like, the loss of the mercenaries accounts for almost all of it. 11 heloed hoplites. The E4 survived. Like, the loss of 13 Beridian infantry and a couple of air gems. The main advantage there is that it frees the fort. Caelum raided a Sauromatian province. Could those troops have helped win the other battle? Look, I probably would have sent them if it was my only hope, but they just would have died. They just would have carked it. Atlantis attacked Jabolba and won. Okay, so Jabolba itself is now under siege. That looks like a ping. Agartha is now on TNN itself, and yeah, all the PD just died. 8 pale ones did die. They actually had to kill things, it looks like. Probably through the benefit of those things being mind blasted and being unable to defend themselves. Yeah, they're going to kill things that are either paralyzed or that they have massive gang up bonuses on. Mind you, when a pale one does hit you, it does a reasonable amount of damage. They're no ancient ones. Ancient ones hit incredibly hard. Ordinary pale ones, it's just 15 piercing. And the PD's broken. Cool, so Agartha is now... TNN is now probably broken by Agartha. We'll check that in a moment. Helheim doing Helheim things, Yomi doing Yomi things. Now, this says TNN attacked Yomi and won. However, if you caught those casualty numbers, I'm not sure what I'd call it. So, TNN looks like they've grouped up a big blob of Tua. And they've come out a pair of Dione and a small support force. Okay, the Tua kill all the mooks, and now what we're interested in is, do the Dione support each other by blocking a full surround on both? It looks like they are, so they're denying a full surround. There's in fact 3 Dione here. The Bane of Numidia, the Forger of the Coward Sword, who we've seen before, he's the tough-skinned one, and Ruler of the Coward Sword, who has the heroic battle prowess, but he is battle fright and limp. Mind you, Dione, he's still pretty good, even with a limp. What I'm seeing here is Dione successfully regen through these offensives. Oh, but I'm seeing one break. Who broke first? The Ruler of the Coward Sword is in fact a coward this day and runs. Oh, Bane of Numidia has run. And it looks close. So many of the 2 are running. Oh, and the 3rd one breaks. At morale 23. Presumably at that point from HP losses from all the junk that had been being killed. So Yomi lost all of its junk, and that was enough to rout the Dione. And even though most of Team TNN was running, they technically win. Yomi loses 21 Bakemono archers at 7 gold each, and 10 free spawn Ko'oni. They do not lose their Diones, any of them, or their Demon Priest. they kill 28 more Tua. So these sort of battles were going to be one of the ways that TNN could win, but only if they could convert them into die-only kills. And what we have noticed is that TNN has not been able to convert their sacred blobs into dead die-only. And if you can't get die-only dead, you're not going to beat Yomi in the early game before all the other counters come up. It remains true, it's just that it becomes much easier to kill Dione with that anyway. So this turn, Yomi fighting a defensive battle and winning against a TNN that looks like it went all in on stopping them, not the Agarthans. Relay hitting Independence, and then bumping off an Atlantean force, and then we're into random events for me, and random events for everyone else. Okay, so let's look at the wars quickly and then do a strategic summary as we do at the end of every one of these episodes. And then I'll have to check when I can release the next turn 19, given the way the recording schedule and the gameplay are syncing up. This war, the Yomi conflict with the heirs of Parthalonia has completely reversed. TNN is basically dead. Their army is significantly, severely depleted. They can raid now, but that's about it. They can't recruit any more units, and they have no income tracing. They have no forts. So none of this gold here is anything. This is all Yomi/Agarthan territory. Fomoriya itself is being worked on, and I'm going to call it will become Yomi's second capital, unless there's some Hail Mary intervention from the Water Nations who look like they're not at all positioned to do so. Agartha will score a second capital in the form of TNN, and that will bring this war to a close. Closely on their heels in the race for additional capitals. Having won a crushing victory in 162, Sauromatia will soon move on to Caelum, and I don't see how Caelum can stop them. The only thing that will delay things is that the Sauromatian army is not that big and not very strong in terms of actual strength value. So those walls of Caelum, those 250 wall integrity walls, will stay for a while, especially if the birds come inside, because birds on siege defense are as good as humans on siege offense, whereas normally the game deliberately favors the attacker. So Caelum's walls can endure for quite a long time if they think they want to be able to call for help, but they're up against a Sauromatia that has a very large grip of territory. Not Helheim big, but big, respectable, not sure everyone else has noticed grip of territory. And the graphs, I think, will show that when we look at them in a moment. I haven't looked at them myself yet, so if I embarrass myself, I'm going to apologize, but Sauromatia looks big, beefy, and in control, and soon to be the rulers of Caelum. And picking up a throne, particularly the Iron Throne, handy. Iron Order Mages are always good. No one's ever going to object to having Order Mages recruitable in a province. Nothing really happening with Hinnom, other than the fact that they have this province, and as a result, they have a whole bunch of extra income, and they have a throne. Advantageous. The Beritian War is interesting. So you saw Beratos push off a Maconian force, which means this northern front is basically resolved for the moment. Beratos probably doesn't have enough to push on Ulm unless this force here continues to march north to relieve. If it does, I'm not sure anyone up this area has enough to stop it. That said, that would expose the southern front. And here Maconi and Helheim are also putting pressure on. Helheim is now in the Beridian cap circle with Hellherdings. 18 of them, in fact. So that'll take some effort to push off. This force is weaker than the Hellherdings. It's, again, Undead Siege Chaff and just a few units that GC's pulled together. But they're enough, and there's infantry moving up behind. So yeah, Helheim's the big winner so far, but we'll see. Pangaea is positioned to be a spoiler on anyone. They could attack Agartha, Ulm, Helheim, Yomi. Pangaea, this triangular empire, is really in a position to play spoiler. So I would be talking to them if I was any of the major powers, because they are central, they're capable. It really comes down to who do they choose to attack. Whereas if they wait, they might lose that initiative. If I was them and they're reasonably blessed, as we know they are, probably go now. Having made those evaluations, also Helheim, massive massive and a big victor of this war. In fact, if anything, they'd probably want this war to go longer, because as long as this war is going, it provides protection for them from their erstwhile allies. So I would be happy with this war continuing for a while as Helheim. Let's do a check to see if my intuition matches what the game is saying. So Helheim, clear province leader. Makoni in third. Who is running second? Is that Sauromatia? Sauromatia running second. Yep, so Sauromatia has a big grip of territory. Second most. Helheim is the clear winner. Clearly leading. Makoni running a respectable third. People's infrastructure is at very different levels. Even though Ulm is relatively compact, they're keeping pace. Relay is actually ahead on the infrastructure despite not being particularly big. Everyone else is sort of running in these two tiers. Who has none? There's a couple of people that have none. That's a wide income spread. That's actually a very wide income spread. Normally people are in clusters. Here, I guess there's some clustering. But the top three look clustered, but they're quite separated. So Helheim, clear leader. Sauromatia in second, not trailing that far, but trailing, behind. Makoni running in third, having been a little softer, now recovering. Beratos was the victor for a while, but you can see Helheim is savaged. Everyone's cannibalized this Beridian income, and it's pushed Helheim to the top. Down the bottom, you've got like the people who are suffering really quite badly, and then you've got Yomi, who are the weakest of the major powers. Remember, Yomi's doing decently well, but they have an income malice, they have bad scales, they have units that cause unrest, they have a lot of things that hold Yomi back from having decent income, and we can see evidence of it here. They are a fraction of what the big players are bringing in, even Makoni, which has its own income problems with Fort Unrest. Gem income things are a little different, but the main difference I'd highlight is that Makoni is actually leading in this one. Sauromatia is doing okay. Helheim is doing okay. Atlantis, actually, who are putting pressure on Xibalba and doing well so far, have very good gem income, it looks like, which bodes well for them. Then you've got a bunch of middle-tier nations. Interestingly, the Giants of Hinnom pop up at this point. Pangaea was weak until relatively recently. Let's just check, did they do... Nope, they haven't put up Mother Oak, so it's not that. I didn't miss a turn 18 Mother Oak. Glad I didn't. Yomi's still relatively weak. Yomi and Beratos in like the similar gem count territory. Is that Ulm? Yeah, Ulm also very weak. So these nations here, not doing well on the gem income. Massively outmatched by Helheim, Makoni, and Sauromatia. Research, it's all about the squids. It's all about relay all the time. And interestingly, Femoria is still running second in research. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to be able to convert that into victories because they don't have the forces left to do it. Ulm running in third. Makoni lagging behind. That'll be a Sauromatia. Yep, Sauromatia, although it looks like they pulled mages. They pulled mages for this war, it looks like. And then a whole bunch of people clustered together. Once Yomi were leading, because they started with the statue that was on research duty, you can see that has ceased to be the case because they have failed to bring researchers online, and their research gradient is nowhere near as aggressive as other nations. So now they're in the middle tier, and they'll continue to fall more behind unless their economy can support researchers. Dominion. Well, Yomi's trying, but the kings here are Helheim with an obscene amount of dominion. There are candles everywhere from Helheim. And that's giving them intelligence, it gives them scales, it gives them the home field advantage. Well done, Helheim. And finally, army size, ignoring the Omniscience itself because we have lots and lots of monoliths. Makoni was leading. And then they lost a whole bunch of junk. I think that's the mercenary undead being killed. Oh well, it happens. Which leaves Ulm with the statistically the largest army. So that'll be... Oh, Sauromatia's catching up. Helheim still has a tiny army by comparison, but it's made up of really good stuff. The Atlantean army is microscopic. The Atlantean army needs to be bigger. The Xibalban army is significantly larger. Yes, I accept a massive quality differential there, but if you want to break down forts, you need numbers. And the Atlanteans at the moment just do not have numbers. In fact, their army is smaller now than it was like 6 turns ago, which boggles my mind. Relay's army is slowly increasing, but again, smaller than it was before because it took some losses. Hinnom's army, small, probably mostly chariots. TNN's army has been ground down. Yomi's army is also quite small, based on SCs still. Meanwhile, I think Beratos has a respectable force. There's no way around it. So, what do we take from all of this? So, clear leader in a couple of territories, Helheim. Common other leaders, Sauromatia's looking really good. Makoni's looking really good. It's winning some battles, but Yomi still has a long way to go to be a major player. So, Helheim, Makoni. Atlantis hasn't been able to convert their early victories over Jabolba into massive economic edge at the moment. Particularly not in research. They're not researching well, and they don't have a huge sort of research pool going yet, but they've got a lot of gem income, but a very weak army. So I'm concerned by the lack of scale in the Atlantean army. Agartha is a middle tier player, but taking TNN will change that and catapult them up a little bit. Sauromatia is already looking very good, and taking Caelum is probably going to just make that one step further. So, final roundup for the last couple of turns. The Elven team up on Yomi didn't work. It didn't work for a couple of reasons. There were some breaks. The first was Yomi killing the Fomorian god. That obviously helped. That freed up Yomi and resources, and it weakened all the remaining Fomorian assets, including that remaining Fomorian king, and any sacreds they might happen to have in their capital. The second bit of good luck was correctly guessing, predicting, or otherwise smacking into TNN armies twice in a row and winning both times. Well, winning the first time and then basically winning even if they retreated the second time, killing a lot of tour. Actually, we've seen that happen a couple of times now that significantly weaken the TNN force. Agartha pulls off a move which basically guarantees that Yomi will win, but guarantees that Agartha will get some very rich TNN territory for basically nothing, because Agartha are nothing if not good at sieges, and they have extra siege chaff on the way if they happen to need it. This fort's only got another turn to go, basically. The Beridian War is complicated by what they're opposed by. The question now is, can they focus on particular threats? The Makonians look like... The Makonians and the Olmish are the most vulnerable, because Helheim can always just melt away and move around you. This Olmish force, I'm not sure how it deals with the main Beridian force, if the Beridians use mage support and the Olmish don't. That said, Olm has a god. Makoni is a bit drawn out. They're fighting on 2 offensive fronts. They have relatively few units compared to what you would think they have, given the relative territory sizes. It's because material hasn't had enough time to accumulate yet. We haven't seen the turns of economic advantage. As it is, the game sits advantage Helheim, but with a couple of notable other players. We're going to watch to see the emerging superpower of Sauromatia, what they do with it. Whether Agartha can turn their vulturing into major power status. Can Yomi pivot off near disaster when TNN came in at the time they were still fighting for Moria and actually turn themselves into a reasonable, respectable threat? Whereas at the moment they're still poor, slowly researched with a small army and a gimmick that is going to end its usefulness soon, as soon as people start getting the gear that counters Dione, which comes relatively early. And how can the coalition powers deal with Beratos? And finally, what of Jabolba? What of the poor bats? Besieged by basalt kings, knowing that Atlantean sacreds are on the way, what of the bat legions, the scorpions, the brave and noble defenders of Jabolba? Well, we'll see in turn 19. Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you again soon. Cheers.